Welcome to Agile Learning Strategies for the Modern Learner. I'm Matt Donovan. I'm Vice President of Digital Learning Strategies and Services, and I'm glad to be here with you guys. Really going to focus on a couple of things today, but first a little bit more about myself. I oversee a content design and development group of about 1,400. I support them globally. I am actually originally from Bloomington, Indiana, where we have a wonderful team right there that focuses on design and development for a lot of our content partners. Although I spend a lot of my time in the design space, what we're going to be talking today are about strategies, though, for the learner as they step into their role in the new and exciting ecosystem of the future. So a couple of things we're going to be covering today. We'll be taking a look at some of the challenges that face our modern learners and the new experiences that we're building for them. Look at the way in which they're going to have some considerations as they start to build their plans as they're moving forward. And then a very simple process or plan approach to way that they can start to build out and map their own journeys. I love this quote. This is an Alvin Toffler quote, often attributed to him from his book. And it really focuses on, the new understanding of what the illiterate of the 21st century will look like. It's not those that cannot read or write, but those that cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. However, I think it actually ties even further into the future around those who cannot connect, reconnect, or collaborate with others. So adding on to what Alvin said several years ago, I think that's what we're really facing. So as learners on our journey, we need to be able to start thinking not only about how we learn and unlearn and relearn, in order to do our jobs or work with others, but we also need to build the networks that make us successful. So I love this quote. It's Albert Einstein: the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. And that's really what we're looking at, what the modern learners are really facing is an increased pace of change, that they're going to learning new skills, collaborating with new folks, expanding networks, more complex networks, and facing that change. So we're really trying to reinforce that need to really grow around that. Now, where does that really come from? And I'm sure many of you have already seen the Fourth Industrial Revolution. This is a great model. I love where it comes out. It starts where we're right now coming out of the third revolution, which is really focused on the automation, computers, and electronics. And it's moving into the fourth, where it's the cyber, the connected systems, the extended internet wrapping around that. And what it's really doing is giving rise in the workplace to the digital consumer, the digital enterprise, and the digital operations. Now, how that translates into the learning world is around the digital learner, the digital learning enterprise, and the digital learning operations. So let me give you a quick example as it talks about it. We make that shift from the 3.0 to the 4.0. So here's an example from a financial industry, for example, and actually this is actually true to me. I just refinanced my mortgage, and so went out to an experience where I was completely virtual in this process, and I was able to, using my phone and my device, I was able to actually complete the experience while waiting for my daughter to finish out her soccer practice. And so I was able to actually receive the documentations, complete the online forms, pull together my financial statements, my wages, and all that stuff, and then ultimately have a process so that I could actually then digitally sign at a later date. And this is the 4.0 experience. If you remember back to the 3.0 experience in the banking industry, it was very customer service oriented, but it required me to leave my environment and go into the bank. I may start the application online, but I had to go into a bank. I may have to sit down with somebody to sit and go through, make sure I had all the paperwork, walk me through all the information. I may have had it, may not, may have to come back, and then I'd have to go and meet with somebody else to do the closing. And so there were a lot of things where I had to leave my life to go into it. But the most recent experience is where the enterprise wrapped around me. And throughout the experience in my most recent one, there was actually a mortgage coach. I called him a mortgage coach. And instead of actually focusing on shuffling papers and all that, because we had a portal where I was gathering my information, it put me through the paces and a workflow, he was there to more connect with me as a human. And I think this is what's most important, is that when we think about the digital, is that it's not going to displace the humans. It's not meant to make it more transactional. It's to create space for better human interactions. And that's what I had with my mortgage coach. So as learners on the learning side, this is where we need to start thinking about how do we start to really take advantage of, maximize our potential within the new digital learning enterprises that we're building, the digital operations, so we can be the best digital learners we possibly can be. So one of the things that we're also facing as a challenge is that the world has become much more complicated from a technology and ecosystem standpoint. Now, normally I would kind of build this out for you, but at a high level, if you look on the left around the point of learning, this is actually how the system actually looks today. It's very complicated. There's a lot of application in the industry. Even 5 years ago, this would have been a lot cleaner on the left. Maybe you'd had an LMS. But walking in it from top to bottom, now in our world, we have the place where we start our point of access. Where are we getting our information? What's our connection? Either it's a dynamic HTML5 portal that links into other things. Maybe it's an LMS interface. Maybe it's a curation platform. But where's my single point that I start to go and my learning journey? Then there's ways in which I interact with it, a mobile device. I have wearable technology on the right, maybe a laptop, a desktop, or maybe a device sent by the company. But I now have more ways in which I'm interacting with the ecosystem. Measurement and analytics, I'm being measured as a learner in many different ways. There's information being gathered about the actions I'm taking, the interactions I have with others, how I'm progressing, how I'm performing, and all that data is becoming more and more available. And I need to understand how that's actually going to be used to either help improve the learning experience for me or prove that the learning experience was successful as I was part of it. Then you think about the experience, and this is where the most rapid growth has been, is that in these experience platforms that are meant to change the type of engagement that we have with the learners. So as I go in, I may have a time-bound spaced learning experience like a MOOC or something like that. I may have a chat bot. I might be going to a live event where I'm getting learning and networking, or I could be doing an AR, VR type interactive experience. But the point is there's a lot of growth in this space. And then you look at the content management. How are they serving up the content, building the content, sharing the content with me? And then the learning assets are all the things they're kind of creating, but myself as a learner, I'm also creating them as well for the rest of the ecosystem. Now that takes it on the left. And what we're seeing on the right-hand side is how this is connecting at the point of work, where you look at from the top to the bottom, the collaborative workspaces, Slack and Microsoft Teams, for example, where we wrap around the point of collaboration. You have the HCM suites, the human capital suites that are helping me run through talent. And then at the bottom you see work in specific management sites where I'm going to get documentation or information in the organization. And when I can't find it there, then I'm going out to the external sites like we all do. If I can't find what do I need, what do? I Google it. The simple takeaway here is that this has become much more complex in the way in which, as a learner, I'm interacting with the organization. Now, I will tell you that I've created this to help us better understand from a usability standpoint, not only how does the organization organize the technology in it, but how does, from a learner perspective, how do we start to understand this a little bit better so that I can maximize my experience in that environment. The traditional work paradigm has been shifted. Traditionally the work itself has been structured, more defined. I came out, I was going to be an accountant, I had accountant training, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do accounting. That's what I do. Now it's continuously evolving. It's not just as accounting as it once was, and now it's bridging in new skill sets, new role expectations, new outputs. The organization historically has provided everything that the learner needs in order to do the job. Now things are changing so fast that you actually need to take ownership for your learning journey. And then the last one is the change in the workplace where it used to be a simplified connection to peers and others in predictable ways. Now you're seeing complex multidimensional paths to our peers, coworkers, and other learning partners. What all this comes to is that in the end, the challenge is that we are going to, as learners, ultimately performers in this workspace, that there's a shift in the value chain. And so take a real quick example of call centers. So we've all been part of a call center. We've either called into one, so you know what the experience is. And today or recently, there's even been humans that pick up that phone for the first part of the phone call. But in the future, those frontline call agents will be replaced by bots. Now, that doesn't mean that humans will go away. What that means is that those humans will shift down the cycle. At some point, there will be a human-human connection, but they're going to be moving upstream where the bots have already processed through, you've routed through an intelligent system so that when you get to the humans, they'll have gathered information so that they can be a point of escalation to resolve your issues. The important part is that learner, as they shift from the front line up the value chain, are going to need new skill sets. They're going to need to take on new roles, have new interactions. They're going to have to learn how to actually bring in data to better understand where are you at in your call journey as a caller in. You can't start from the beginning again. So you'll have to learn new skill sets of like, how do I analyze data about the experience in the call? So these are new skill sets that as a learner, I have to take accountability to be able to grow because the organization is too slow, too bureaucratic to be able to determine everything craft it, and roll it out to me. By the time they do that, it's shifted again. With the amount of transition and change that we're facing, it's just too slow for the antiquated ways we have. So the learner has to come into the ecosystem. These are just some of the new skills for the workforce. We look for individual contributors. I just throw a couple out here. There's new things that are coming out. So this is some of the stuff that we need to begin to learn, to adopt as learners and embrace in different ways. Now, as we kind of move out of the challenges, we're going to take a look at some things you need to consider as a learner starting to create and own your learning journey. Because the first rule of a modern learning experience is that the learner has to take accountability for the journey. As designers, we often like to think that we can actually design for relevance, but the truth is you cannot design for relevance. You can create the environment for that, but relevance is achieved with the connection of the learner on the other end. And so the learner has to be there, has to be bought in, take ownership for relevance to truly be achieved. And so how do we start to look at that? By the way, I love this quote. This is one of my favorite ones, and I think this is as much about us as designers as it is about us learners, but it's not necessary to change survival. It's not mandatory. I think that's the call to action, that as we are motivated, we have to make the move. That's why the learners must take ownership in that. So I talked a little bit about relevance. I want to think about that. If content were water, relevance would be the drinkability. And right now in our organizations, we surround learners with a whole lot of information that may not be consumable, because it's nice, it's good, decent content, but it's not really bringing it home to me. How does it help me improve my job, solve a problem, help me get to that future state of an output? Now, it's not completely on the organization. The organization will put the materials around, but as I said, the learners need to step in, be able to help structure. You're going to be more effective as a learner if you actually can start to help create the relevance within the systems that we have. Another concept that we often talk about is understanding what you're actually trying to achieve. Where are you going to? What are you trying to get out of it? So this is the idea of convergence versus divergence. And really, convergence is about surrounding yourself with information that's going to help you get better at a role or a performance. Divergence is about trying to do something new or different. And the important part here is that when you're building, taking ownership for your learning journey, you need to think, are you trying to get better at something, or are you trying to innovate? Because the resources in your network, the information you surround yourself will be different if you're trying to go for innovation versus performance norming or getting better at a skill set. So it's important on your learning journey, you start to really think about, where am I going to start to find those? And that sets us up with a framework to consider. And what's important here is the 5 moments of learning need. I like this. I combine it with a social side to be able to do this. Now, this is set from a learner's perspective. The 5 moments of learning need, great. Many of you, I'm sure, know about it. Conrad Govertson and Bob Moshe have done a fantastic job. I love this. It's a very learner-centric model. It helps us starting to think about, I need to think beyond the first time I'm trying to learn something and move into the other moments of when I'm going to need to know something, so that I can start to create my resources for my learning journey. How do I start to wrap them around myself, meeting not just my immediate need the first time, but when something changes, when something goes wrong. And that's where we really look at the right-hand side. And this is starting to change the roles that we have as a learner. So traditionally, the organization would give me content, I would consume it. Now, as a learner, I start to take on new roles. I take a role as a moderator, a curator, a collaborator, a contributor. I start to be able to connect with others to create meaning and value for myself while also providing it for others. And when you really think about moments 3, 4, and 5, when you're applying it and trying to get better around it, adjusting to something that's changing in the environment, or react when something fails or goes wrong, that's when I really need to make sure I have a great performance network that I'm either participating or contributing to. That's where the social roles on the right really come into play. And it's good to start thinking about not just what is the content I need to learn to do something, but who are the people that are going to help me along, help me solve those problems in my future moments of need. So again, as I start my learning journey, I want to think about, am I trying to get better at something? Am I trying to innovate? How will I use, what kind of information will I need at the first moment versus when something goes wrong or changes? How do I arrange that? How do I start to build my networks? Now you're starting to see how we're pulling those pieces together. Now there's another piece in here that I just love talking about, is really around that network. And so we've talked about how important it is in that social aspect. And really talking about agile coaching and mentoring. And here's my premise, is that Coaching in and of itself is a good activity. Lots of positive things can come out of it. But when it's tied to action-oriented, it's meant to drive value for both parties. There's a good relationship behind that. Now, what I'm talking about around Agile coaching mentoring is when it's purpose-driven, organic relationships to grow, span boundaries, and innovate within this. And there's a great article in the HBR that really refers to, from Rob Cross talking about collaborative overload. And the idea here is that you want to think about growing your networks in very intelligent ways, not just starting to collect connections to people on LinkedIn or business cards for future reference. What you're starting to do is think of your network, your connection with other people in a very meaningful manner. The first thing is, as you start to bring in people, you want to be sensitive to collaborative overload. And what that means is that, and in the article, he goes into great detail about it. I love the article about this. But the idea is that we can actually have too much collaboration. It creates noise in the system. It confuses of what we're trying to achieve or be done with it. So there's some things around this when we look at, like breaking expertise bottlenecks, things about finding, growing new channels, making new connections. So being intelligent and thinking about how your network's going to help you grow over time, but beyond just certain parts of expertise, adding in new people with that, discover and leveraging hidden talents inside your network, getting to know folks, and really what we're saying is use an empathetic conversation to uncover strengths, needs, talents, and bringing those forward. And really thinking about integrating the newcomers. And so these people are on the edges of people you've just met. How do you actually make a connection through a coaching and mentoring relationship perhaps, and bring them closer to the core of your network to better understand who they are and how they're going to actually deliver value for you or make connections to other folks. So the goal is to be a connected learner, not just a continuous learner. And this is really around making meaningful connections to drive value. The last one is, or the last two, really focus on spanning boundaries. And this is really thinking beyond your organizational, your geographic, and your social silos, and really pushing beyond those to bring people into your space. And then the last one is promoting expertise. You want to ensure that expertise shared and leveraged to solve new challenges, and really want to make sure that you are, not only the things and new skills that you have, but recognizing those in others and making connection amongst others in your network. So Agile coaching and mentoring is a great way to actually bolster, build out, and create that social network that will help you in your moments 3, 4, and 5. As I was talking about, as your moments of learning need, you need to build that network to kind of grow in that space. And so this kind of brings us to pretty much the steps and the process. So you want to craft and refine your plan. So these are the steps to how you start to be from a learner standpoint, is really to first think about what it is you're trying to learn. What is it trying to achieve? Thinking through the range of moments, thinking about convergence or divergence. How are you going to bring those in? You want to cultivate your network, grow that. Find and join the right communities that will help reinforce the desired performance that you want in the future. Engage and learn through Agile coaching and mentoring. And then the last one, and most importantly, is to drive curiosity, to continuously be curious. So with that, I want to leave you. We've kind of gone through the considerations, some challenges, and now I've kind of given you a process. And so good luck on your journey as you're moving forward in that path towards becoming that highly efficient, highly effective modern learner.